Imagine you've spent, um, I don't know, 3 entire years memorizing every single component of a car engine.
Okay.
You know the exact diameter of the spark plugs, the tension of the serpentine belt.
Right, the real nitty-gritty stuff.
Exactly. And like the precise chemical makeup of the transmission fluid. But then someone just drops you behind the wheel in the middle of a chaotic, multi-lane roundabout
Oh no.
in a foreign country during rush hour.
You'd crash
You
immediately.
would crash instantly. You wouldn't even make it 3 feet. And yet, for decades, that is literally exactly how we taught foreign languages.
Yeah, it really is.
We treated language like this mechanical system to be memorized,
Yeah.
right? Rather than a vehicle that you actually have to drive. So, welcome into the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are custom tailoring this entire exploration specifically for you, our listener, as you prepare to tackle a massive professional milestone.
Yes, your teaching opposition exam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are currently staring down topic 5.
Mm-hmm.
Oral communication in a foreign language classroom, and we know the stakes are just incredibly high for you right now.
Oh, absolutely. Today is really about building a cohesive, bulletproof pedagogical defense, something you can present to an exam tribunal with, absolute authority.
Right, and to do that, we are pulling our insights today from a really comprehensive core text and an exam-specific outline entirely dedicated to topic 5.
But, and this is crucial, to impress an exam board, you can't just recite facts like you're reading a table of contents.
No, they fall asleep.
Right, you have to weave a compelling narrative. So we're going to build your defense from the ground up, starting with a strict, logical progression.
Which is exactly what the tribunal wants to see.
Exactly. We'll start with the introduction and the theoretical framework, basically the why we teach this way. Then we'll look under the hood at the key models, like how the human brain actually processes speech.
Love that.
From there, we'll move into the implications for teaching, before finally stepping into the classroom application to prove how you'd execute and assess all this with real students. And then we'll wrap up with a solid conclusion.
So you get a complete mental cheat sheet. Let's start with that foundational shift. Because if we go back to that car analogy,
Yeah, the mechanics.
right, historically the classroom was highly structural. It was all about the mechanics. You conjugated verbs, you translated sentences word for word, and like if your grammar was flawless, the teacher said you knew the language.
Even if you couldn't order a coffee to save your life.
Exactly. But the modern approach, which is the absolute cornerstone of topic 5, completely flips that on its head. We've moved entirely to a functional communicative view.
And when you establish this shift for your examiners, you need to anchor it with a specific name, Del Hymes.
Okay, Delheims. Got it.
Hymes is a non-negotiable citation here. He introduced the concept of communicative competence.
Which means what exactly in this context?
Well, before Hymes, linguists had largely focused on whether a sentence was just, grammatically correct. But Hymes stepped in and argued that knowing a language means knowing how to use it appropriately in specific social and cultural contexts.
Because knowing the dictionary definition of words doesn't help if you don't understand the social rules of the road.
Right, exactly.
Like you might know the mechanics of the engine, but if you don't know how to merge in heavy traffic or when it's culturally appropriate to honk your horn, the communication just breaks down entirely.
That's a great way to put it. The social environment absolutely dictates how we operate the machinery of language. Which brings us to the second heavyweight theorist you need to cite in your introduction.
Okay, who's up next?
Michael Halliday. Halliday took a sociolinguistic view, describing language as a social semiotic system.
Okay, wait, I want to pause right there.
Sure.
Because social semiotic system is exactly the kind of dense academic jargon that examiners absolutely look for, but it only scores points if you can actually explain it.
True. You can't just drop the buzzword.
Right. So semiotics is the study of signs and symbols, right? The mechanics of meaning making. So how does that actually play out in a classroom?
Let's break it down to basic human behavior. Imagine a teenager aggressively rolling their eyes, crossing their arms, and saying, "Fine."
Oh, yeah, I know that fine.
Right. Now compare that to a toddler happily clapping their hands and yelling, "Fine."
It's a totally different universe.
Exactly. The dictionary definition of the word hasn't changed at all, but the semiotics, the meaning making through the tone, the body language, the power dynamic in the room, that completely alters the message.
Oh, wow. Okay, that makes so much sense.
Halliday's point is that meaning does not exist in a vacuum inside a textbook. Language develops primarily through social interaction. We learn language in order to do things with other people.
Which I guess forces us to draw a massive line in the sand for the exam, right? The
Yeah.
distinction between spoken and
Well,
written
yeah,
language.
absolutely. It's a fundamental difference.
Because if language is a social tool, spoken language is just the absolute wildest, most unpredictable version of it. I mean, it's entirely spontaneous.
The spontaneity is the defining feature. Because it's produced in real time, speakers are organizing their thoughts, accessing vocabulary, and physically articulating sounds all at the exact same millisecond.
It sounds exhausting when you put it like that.
It is. It's a massive cognitive overload,
Eh.
and that naturally produces hesitations, pauses, false starts, and self-corrections.
Like saying and all the time.
Exactly. And when you discuss this in your exam, you must emphasize to the tribunal that these are not errors. They are natural, vital features of spoken discourse.
That's such a good point. And it's also incredibly context dependent, right? Like if we're sitting in a room together and I point to a table and say, "Can you hand me that?"
I know exactly what you mean.
Right, because we share the same physical space. We share the visual field. But if I wrote, "Can you hand me that?" on a piece of paper and mailed it to you,
It would be utterly meaningless.
completely. Spoken language relies heavily on the physical environment to carry half the meaning, which is why it's inherently more informal.
Yeah, we speak in fragmented sentences and we use discourse markers like, well, or, just to buy our brains time to think.
Okay, so if language is like driving in traffic, there are a lot of moving parts happening in the driver's brain simultaneously, which I think seamlessly leads us into unpacking the specific processes and models.
How we process language, exactly.
Right. So handling that dynamism requires the brain to perform several complex operations at once. How do we break this down for the exam?
You need to map out the 4 components of oral communication. First, we have the phonological component.
Okay, phonological.
This is the physical sound, the pronunciation, the stress, the rhythm, and the intonation. It's the literal vibration of the air.
Right. And then
Second is the lexical and grammatical component, which is the vocabulary range and structural accuracy. This is the traditional machinery of the language.
okay, so the phonological is the sound, lexical is the machinery. What's the third?
Discourse competence. If grammar is the machinery, discourse is the roadmap. It's the ability to organize ideas cohesively over a longer stretch of time.
Oh, so linking sentences together logically so the listener doesn't get completely lost.
Precisely. And the fourth component, which ties directly back to what we just discussed about context, is the paralinguistic component.
Oh, right. The unspoken half of the conversation.
Yes.
Like the hand gestures, the facial expressions, the posture. It's what you do with your hands when you completely forget the French word for refrigerator and have to, like, pantomime opening a cold box.
We've all been there. And to manage those 4 components simultaneously, oral communication relies on a constant feedback loop between 2 closely related skills.
Speaking and listening, I assume.
You got it. Speaking is the productive skill, and listening is the receptive skill. And this is exactly where you need to introduce the core cognitive models of language acquisition to your tribunal.
Okay, let's get some names for the cheat sheet.
The key authors for the exam here are Stephen Krashen and Merrill Swain.
Oh, Krashen is ubiquitous in language pedagogy. I mean, you can't escape him. He's the architect behind comprehensible input, right? The whole I+1 thing.
That's the one. The concept is that language acquisition happens effortlessly when learners are exposed to input that is just one step above their current level of competence.
So the I is what they already know, and the +1 is the slight manageable challenge.
Exactly. If they understand 80% of a conversation, their brain will naturally bridge the gap and acquire the remaining 20% from context.
It's an elegant theory.
Yeah.
I mean, it fundamentally changed how we design materials. We started flooding classrooms with target language audio and visual media.
True, but it is only half the story.
Right. And I've always wanted to push back on Krashen's theory a bit. Because, okay, if comprehensible input is all it takes, why couldn't I just become perfectly fluent in Japanese by watching anime with subtitles for 1,000 hours?
A lot of people have tried that.
Right. I'd be receiving a massive amount of I+1 input, but I guarantee you I wouldn't be able to hold a conversation. There has to be a missing cognitive mechanism.
You've just beautifully illustrated the exact limitation that Merrill Swain addressed. She is the counterweight to Krashen you must mention.
Okay, so what was her answer to that?
Swain introduced the output hypothesis. She argued that while input is essential for building a passive foundation, it doesn't force syntactic processing. Producing language, actually struggling to speak it out loud, forces learners to reflect on their own linguistic knowledge. Swain calls this noticing the gap,
Oh, noticing the gap. Bringing back our car analogy.
Go for it.
So crashing is like watching 100 beautifully shot YouTube tutorials on how to drive a manual transmission. You feel like you understand it perfectly.
But you've never touched a steering wheel.
Exactly. But swaying is saying you don't actually learn until you are behind the wheel. You try to shift into third gear, and you completely stall the car in the middle of an intersection.
That panic you feel.
Yeah, the panic of stalling. That sudden realization of, wait, I actually don't know how to release a clutch. That is noticing the gap.
That cognitive friction is where the true acquisition happens. When a learner tries to order a coffee and realizes they actually don't know the verb for want, they are primed to learn that specific word.
Because they have a genuine, immediate need for it.
Exactly. So for your exam, you establish that both input and output are required. But we also have to dive deeper into the mechanics of that listening input. How does a student actually process the sounds hitting their ear?
Right, because hearing is one thing, processing is another.
Your sources highlight two distinct listening processes, bottom-up and top-down processing.
Okay, let me try to clarify this for the exam. So is bottom-up processing basically like building with individual Lego bricks?
I like that. How so?
Like the brain hears a raw phonetic sound, decodes it into a phoneme, connects the phones to build a word, and then strings those words together to figure out the grammatical sentence. You're building the meaning strictly from the data you're receiving block by block.
Yes, that is a perfect analogy. And top-down processing is the exact opposite.
So looking at the picture on the Lego box to know what you're supposed to be building.
Exactly. Top-down processing relies heavily on background knowledge, cultural context, and situational expectations. If you walk into a bakery and the person behind the counter speaks to you, your brain already anticipates vocabulary related to bread, pastries, and prices.
Oh, so you don't need to decode every single syllable they say because your expectations fill in the blanks.
Right, which is incredibly necessary because real-world listening is often hostile to the bottom-up process.
Oh, for sure. You're dealing with rapid speech rates, unfamiliar accents, background noise. I mean, when a native speaker says, "What you gonna do?" instead of "What are you gonna do?"
The bottom-up Lego bricks are completely mangled.
Yeah, they're destroyed. You have to rely on the top-down picture on the box just to survive the conversation.
And the cognitive load of juggling top-down and bottom-up processing while simultaneously trying to formulate an output response, it's staggering.
It's a miracle we ever talk to each other at all.
Truly. Which brings us to a critical pivot point in your exam defense. You've established the theory, the semiotics, and the cognitive models.
Right, but knowing how an engine works internally doesn't mean you know how to run a driving school.
Exactly. You must prove to the tribunal that you can translate this heavy cognitive theory into actionable methodology. We have to bridge the gap to implications for teaching.
Okay, so what is the absolute anchor for this section of the defense?
The Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, the CEFR.
Oh, the CEFR. Yeah, that's a massive paradigm shift.
It explicitly mandates that classrooms must reflect real-world communication. It heavily emphasizes spoken interaction and production over passive memorization.
So to execute that vision, what core methodological approaches does a teacher absolutely have to use?
You need to present three. The first is the overarching philosophy, communicative language teaching, or CLT.
And what's the core of CLT?
Under CLT, the primary goal of the classroom is meaningful interaction. Accuracy is secondary to fluency and intelligibility. Language is a tool for communication, not a subject to be studied under a microscope.
Okay, so if CLT is the broad philosophy, what is the specific vehicle? Like, how do we do it?
The vehicle is task-based learning. This approach gives students meaningful, authentic tasks where they must use the target language to achieve a specific non-linguistic goal.
Oh, I love this. It sounds like an escape room.
An escape room.
Yeah. In a well-designed escape room, you aren't just reciting facts to a game master. You're locked in a room with your friends, and you are forced to use communication collaboratively as a tool to unlock the next clue.
That's a great way to visualize it.
The language itself isn't the final product. The solved puzzle is the product. If you don't communicate effectively, you don't escape.
That captures the urgency and authenticity of task-based learning perfectly. And importantly, an escape room is never a solo mission.
Right.
That naturally introduces your third methodological pillar, cooperative learning.
So, using pair and group work.
Yes, but for the exam, you must explain why group work is pedagogically superior. Think about a traditional teacher-fronted classroom of 30 students. If the class is an hour long, Each student might get to speak for, what, 60 seconds?
If they're lucky.
Right. But by breaking the room into pairs, you instantly multiply the active speaking time by a factor of 15. Furthermore, it directly addresses a critical psychological barrier in language learning, the affective filter.
Oh, the affective filter. That's basically the student's anxiety level, right?
Exactly.
Because when a teenager is asked to stand up and speak a foreign language in front of 30 judging peers, their affective filter just spikes. Their brain goes into a fight-or-flight response, which completely blocks the cognitive processing we talked about earlier.
They literally cannot access their vocabulary.
Yeah, their mind goes blank.
But when you lower the stakes and ask them to solve a puzzle with just one peer sitting next to them, the affective filter drops. The anxiety vanishes, allowing the cognitive machinery to actually work.
And within those small groups, they're forced to develop interaction strategies, right? How to maintain the conversation flow.
Yes. When they hit a wall, they have to negotiate meaning. They learn to ask for clarification, reformulate their ideas, and confirm comprehension.
They learn to say, could you repeat that? Or do you mean this? Rather than just, giving up.
Precisely.
But I mean, setting up this kind of escape room dynamic, collaborative environment requires airtight lesson planning. You can't just walk into a room, clap your hands, and tell 30 teenagers to communicate.
That is a recipe for absolute chaos.
Yeah, complete disaster.
Yeah.
So this necessitates a shift from broad teaching implications to exact classroom applications. What specific activities should our listener be listing for the exam tribunal?
You want to showcase a diverse toolkit. Role plays and simulations are highly effective because they recreate the specific social context Delheim's talked about.
Okay, role plays. What else?
Debates are excellent for older students because they force collaborative argumentation and higher-order thinking. Storytelling is also great. But the crown jewel of communicative activities, which you absolutely must mention, is the information gap activity.
Wait, let's unpack the mechanics of an information gap because I think it perfectly illustrates task-based learning.
Go ahead.
So in an information gap, student A has half the necessary information, like maybe they have the train schedule, and student B has the other half. They have a strict budget and a list of destinations.
Right.
So they literally cannot complete the assignment unless they talk to each other. It artificially manufactures the necessity of communication.
It forces noticing the gap in real time. It's brilliant. And to demonstrate to the tribunal that you are a modern, forward-thinking educator, you must weave the modern integration of digital resources into these applications.
Oh, like video conferencing.
Exactly. The physical classroom is no longer the only environment for interaction. Integrating video conferencing with partner schools in other countries, or utilizing multimedia projects and platforms vastly diversifies the cultural context students are exposed to.
Okay, but all of these fantastic dynamic activities bring up what I think is the most dangerous pitfall of the exam.
Assessment strategies.
Yes, assessment. How on earth do you grade an information gap activity? If we aren't just grading a multiple-choice grammar test, what are the metrics?
The key is that teachers must evaluate multiple criteria simultaneously. You assess pronunciation and intelligibility, you assess the range of vocabulary, you assess their interaction strategies, are they actively keeping the conversation alive, and you assess their fluency.
Okay, wait. I have to push back on this because it feels like a massive contradiction.
How so?
We established very clearly during the theoretical framework that natural, spontaneous spoken language is incredibly messy. It is full of spontaneous hesitations, broken sentences, and discourse markers. So how can a teacher fairly penalize a language learner for lacking fluency or accuracy if native speakers don't even speak perfectly? Are we holding them to a standard that doesn't even exist in the real world?
That is the exact philosophical tension your examiners want to see you navigate.
Oh, really?
Yes. If you bring that friction up in your defense, you show a profound understanding of the topic. The resolution to that tension lies in distinguishing between traditional structural perfection and modern interactional competence.
Okay, interactional competence.
In a communicative classroom, fluency does not mean a flawless robotic delivery. The sources define communicative fluency as the ability to maintain the flow of conversation with minimal disruptive hesitation.
Ah, okay. So the metric isn't whether they pause to say, the metric is whether the communication breaks down entirely?
Precisely. If a student forgets a word, but successfully uses a communication strategy like gesturing or describing the object to negotiate meaning and keep the interaction alive, that is not a failure of accuracy. That is a triumph of communicative competence.
Wow, okay. That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. And this is why you must tell the tribunal that you will use analytical rubrics and formative assessment. A rubric separates these criteria. A student might score a 5 out of 10 on grammatical accuracy, but a 10 out of 10 on interaction strategies.
Giving them a much more holistic, equitable grade. It also turns assessment into a tool to give constructive feedback rather than just a punishment. It's formative.
Exactly. You can point to the rubric and say, your grammar is improving, but next time, I want to see you ask your partner more follow-up questions.
That's brilliant. Formative assessment guides future learning, which perfectly positions us to bring this discussion to its formal conclusion.
The final step, improving the ultimate goal of language education.
Right. So let's do a rapid-fire recap of the exam structure for you, the listener, so you have this locked in.
Let's do it.
You open your presentation by establishing the paradigm shift toward communicative competence with Del Himes and Michael Halliday.
Then you break down the speaking and listening cognitive processes, contrasting Krashen's input with Swain's output theory.
Next, you apply it to methodology using the CEFR. You advocate for communicative language teaching, driven by task-based and cooperative learning.
And finally, you prove your practical competence by designing activities like information gaps and assessing them equitably using holistic analytical rubrics.
That is a masterclass in exam defense.
Yeah.
But what is the final summary we pull from the sources? What's a concluding thought?
The ultimate takeaway is this. Fostering oral communication isn't just about linguistic development. It builds profound learner autonomy, confidence, and the ability to participate actively in interconnected, multilingual societies.
You're handing them the keys to the car and trusting them to drive.
Exactly.
It's incredibly empowering. But before we sign off and before you head back into your study session, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, I like these.
We talked about how digital technologies like video conferencing and multimedia are becoming a core part of the communicative classroom, right?
Yes, absolutely necessary.
But we also established that paralinguistic features like body language and shared physical context are crucial to how we negotiate meaning in oral communication.
They're the vital, unspoken half of it.
Exactly. So here is the question for you to consider. If those physical shared space cues are so critical, how might our increasing reliance on digital screen-based language learning fundamentally change the way students negotiate meaning in the future?
That's a great point if we're just talking to disembodied heads on a flat screen.
Right. Are we losing a vital piece of communicative competence, or are we simply evolving an entirely new one?
As education shifts further into the digital realm, that is a question every modern teacher will eventually have to answer.
Something to think about before your exam. To our listener, thank you for letting us join you on this custom deep dive. You have the theory, the models, and the methodology. Step into that tribunal with total confidence. Best of luck on your teaching exam. You are going to do amazing.